And I was a scout, and I really think scouts are great. I enjoyed my Boy Scout time.
Can you talk a little bit about that EDM versus laser? How the accuracy?
Yeah, when you're cutting out parts, the most efficient way is to stamp it. You can get 5 blades a second, yeah. But when the steel has carbon content greater than 1%, actually about 0.95, it starts to get really hard to stamp. It's really hard on the tooling. And so here comes the lasers, because we started with lasers back in the 90s. In fact, Lester used lasers because I convinced him to, and Benchmade. And so the laser becomes the next best way. You can get very close tolerance, but you have a little bit of a kerf. It's only a half a thou or so, but it's still a kerf. And so when you got 2 parts that are coming together, sometimes that kerf doesn't go in your favor. Water jets work real well for cutting out hard steels, but you still have to machine them. They're not quite as accurate, so you got to do more finish work to get to the shape. A wire EDM is a wire, yeah, is a wire that has electrical charge that goes through it. And that electrical charge literally burns its way through the steel. But you can stack up, 10 blades. And then this wire will actually cut the lock well out of all 10 at the same time, or cut the head. But it's a very slow process. The wire moves very slow. You can only stack about 10 or 12 parts. And so you only use it where it really need tight accuracy. And we can hold 3/10,000ths of an inch with a wire EDM, but we got to run it 24/5 in order to make all the natives and the knives that we make. Anybody can do it. They've been around a long time. The question is whether or not it's cost effective. So, money, quality, that's kind of the game you're always playing. That's where China comes in, because it's about 2 7/8, I think, because they can make, the yuan is 6 to 1. So when my dollar hits China, it's worth $6. So I can buy a knife in China, built, boxed, shipped, ready to sell, for less money than I pay for the steel in America. So some people say it isn't a fair playing field. I'll let you do the politics, but it allows us to make some cost-effective knives. We just don't like to make too many knives in China, because on the flip side, they counterfeit everything we do. And so it's
they sure do.
We're paying
right down to the box, the logo, and the certificate.
Everything, yeah. Even the letters that we put in them, but that's their culture. It's not considered bad. When Eric and I were going into factories in China, we'd say, "Oh, there's one of your designs, Dad. Oh, there's one of yours. There's a Chris Reeve design," and the maker would come out and say, "Thank you for making such good designs that I can use to support my family." In all sincerity, it is a wise man that copies a successful man so that he too can be successful. That's just part of their culture. Some cultures, they do different things that you would also not agree with, and I'll leave the politics alone. I'm a political junkie, and I tend to get very opinionated, so I'll keep my mouth shut.
If someone came to you with a design, let's say of a mechanism or even shape of a new blade, and they wanted to become a millionaire, how would you work the process? You say you like it, would you prototype it next, patent it? What would happen?
First of all, they won't become millionaires. You're not going to get rich on royalties unless you develop YouTube or something like that. We get about 1 a week, sometimes more. And they'll come in on a napkin, they'll come in fully CAD drawn, sometimes they'll come in fully made custom knife. We evaluate them, we decide whether or not they'll work for us in our market, and then we either say yay or nay. If we say yay, then we have them sign a contract. We pay 5% royalties of all the money that comes in, and we'll re-engineer it, and then we'll figure out who can make it. We got 10 makers we work with, and can we make it competitively? Then we'll bring it out here to the shows. That's what all these are, and we'll get feedback from knowledgeable knife users, not dealers, because the users are way more passionate about the product than the dealer. Some dealers are really passionate.
So they do the field testing for you?
Well, you're here doing it. He's playing with one now. I mean, that's why we're here. We do it at about 6 shows a year, and then we have private showings. We call them meets. We've been doing the Amsterdam meet. I think we just did our 12th or 13th annual, and we invite people, 80 people max, and we bring them into a room. We show them all the prototypes. We want to pass them around, discuss them, feed them lunch, show them some more prototypes, answer questions like I'm doing here. And we do that. We've done them in England, Germany, Netherlands, and Eric did one in Taiwan this year. But they're really useful for us. How do you like that?
I really like it. I like the Polestar, but although I'm carrying a PM2, I usually tend to the smaller ones, and so I really was excited to see this one just because it's a little more of what I prefer.
There seems to be a wide market that can oftentimes be filled with 2 models, and then sometimes you have to go smaller or larger, which we do also.
I like the steel upgrade from something like the Tenacious. I like the sharpening choil. I like the pattern. It feels better than the Tenacious line does. Honestly, I mean, are you guys going to keep selling the Tenacious line with these?
Yeah, and we have the Efficient also.
Right, yeah. I'm thinking the Efficient, the Alcione, whatever, and the Polestar. I don't know if somebody asked me what budget Spyderco do I get, I would always recommend one of those 3 new ones over the old ones just because I just like them a lot better.
Yeah, well, they're newer. Eric and I designed that Tenacious together. It was about a year long in the development. First we put a stop lock in it, and then we decided that the maker probably couldn't do it. Then we re-engineered it for a liner lock.
Yeah, it's a great knife.
Yeah, it's popular. We sell a lot of them. The Efficient was a co-design with Ed Schemp and Eric. Okay. And we'll also make a bigger one and a smaller one. Okay. The Polestar and the Alcione were all mine. And those would probably be our 3 Spyderco value folders, we call them. Right. So the guy that makes the Efficient is really not interested in using any other steels. We say passion is the spice and the spirit that makes excellence possible. And most of the people here are pretty passionate about knives.
So you have people mainly coming to you. You don't need to go out and look for...
We do once in a while, but not often. Eric has grabbed a few where he's gone to them, but usually they come to us. They're really way easier to deal with, when they come to us. But we've got usually about 50 to 100 in process at any given time. When we have our R&D meetings on Monday morning, we go through each model. Where is it in development? What do we need to do yet? It's the new steels, LC200. We're testing it now. We're going to try to make some kitchen knives out of it. There's just a lot going on.
I think the production will be even better.
Question. Have y'all, I know that in the past I think it was an ATR that had a frame compression lock. Are y'all looking at doing any more of that?
We'd like to. The ATR I designed about 1999, and it was a really departure design. There was nothing quite like it. And I wanted to have a little bit of Marshall Bladecraft in there. That's why it had all the holes so you can rotate it. We do that a little bit in the Shaman, where you've got an indentation. No, we didn't. didn't put it
I think
in.
you're thinking little temperance.
The little temperance, yeah. And so you can rotate it. But when you,
Big one's right there in the front.
that's a 3.5.
Yeah.
But with the, see here we have 2 divots because the longer knife has the clip landing in different places. But when you've got the divots, it's easier to rotate. There's 2 ways to rotate. You can rotate it like this, or some people rotate it like that. Because you're going from forward grip to reverse grip and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot more involved in that world.
Can I see it? Yeah, sure.
But we made the ATR, and the company in Colorado that was machining the handles was a specialist in titanium. And then they went under. And so there went our handles. So we didn't want to do it in-house. We didn't have the equipment at the time. And then we got the Japanese maker to do it in stainless. And so it was also an integral compression lock. But for some reason, it wasn't nearly as popular as the titanium one.
I wonder if maybe not even necessarily an ATR, but some other design.
We did a para with an integral compression, and we used a steel liner in the lock head itself, just for added strength. But we just never were able to put it in production. You know, you got 50 designs in front of you, and you got 10 makers. Pick. You know, we're always picking. You know, and sometimes you'll pick a maker like the Rhino, Reinhold, beautiful design. The maker couldn't meet our quality standards. We're going to second 1,200 pieces. So we went to another maker.
You'll probably sell all 1,200 at the second sale.
Probably, but you know they're less than we like. You know, usually our seconds are cosmetically flawed, not necessarily lower quality. You know.
Well, that's the question. You have some sort of everyday carry knives, and you're making some sort of high-end knives. Are you just trying to broaden your production, or any?
We're always broadening production, but high-end is generally not better quality. It's just harder to make. Like a one-piece integral handle is just really a mother to make. And so you end up with higher costs. And collectors like that, you know, they want something that is really hard to make.
Right.
Titanium liner
And so
titanium.
we can do it now, but we have to really fit it in time-wise. It would be easier to have our Tai Chung guy do it, because he's a really good maker. He's got good capacity. He doesn't want to work for anybody else. He only wants to work for us, so we got to keep him busy. And we could probably do it with him faster than we could do it in our own factory. Because we introduced the Shaman, the smaller native, another knife, and then we're making maybe 500, 1,000 a month. But then they start to sell better. And so as your capacity gets filled, you can't add more knives unless you drop something off. That's the same thing like we were talking about with time. A wise person told me you can't add anything new to your life unless you leave something out. So what are you going to discontinue? What are you going to stop doing? Which hobby are you going to give up to take on a new one?
You do anything with pocket clips lately? Any new designs? Or?
Just the wire clip and the figure, or what do we call that?
Sorry if I put something back. Just ask me.
What's our in-house name for it? It's Eric. What do we call our clip?
The
hourglass clip. Yeah, hourglass.
The sliver
And both of those clips work really well. Most of the custom clips are prettier, but they don't necessarily work better. Somebody comes up with a better idea. Like the ball bearings. Everybody's using ball bearings now. And we played with that 20 years ago, and it's okay, but it has its limitations. One of the real limitations is that, it's hard to. This is not it.
I don't know if this is just if it's an early sample or something, but I figured it might be something different about the compression level with the flipper.
See, this is something you can grab onto. When you start making clips like this, you can't grab onto them. And so there's, like everything else, there's upsides and downsides.
I just figured you guys would want to know about it. It could be me. Entirely my finger.
That's where that belongs. I'm testing LC200 for locks. The Caribbean uses LC200 for a blade, so we can have plain edges with better edge retention, but we needed more history on the lock. So we're making locks out of LC200 so that I can test the material. Does it have enough spring tension? Does it have enough toughness? You know?
Will there be an appreciable difference in the serrated model between this steel and the H1, or is it really just going to be on the plain edge?
I think the plain edge is the bigger difference. Serrated edges will almost always stay sharper longer than plain edges by about double. Given the same steel, the same edge geometry, the same grind, the serrated edge will usually cut twice as many millimeters of cardstock on a Catra than a plain edge.
Congratulations to me.
Oh, partially because you've got a longer cutting edge. Okay, it's like a big boat sails across the ocean faster because it's not going up and down the waves. Okay, you've got more linear inches of cutting surface. You've got points. You know, like you can't cut a tomato, you stab it with a point. Or the serrated edge, you're just points all over the place.
So you weren't talking about the abrasion of the steel?
No, it's in the edge geometry. Okay. And then the way we make serrations, we form them so that we can get that.
But on the H1, it's work hardened, right?
H1's an exception. H1 is about 4 or 5 times the plain edge.
Will you get the same with this new steel?
Don't think so. We think it'll be back to double. We think it's partially because the H1 is an austenitic steel. It's not heat treated. So there's something having to do with the heat treating.
I love the shaft.
But Crucible tested it for a long time. Microphotography, everything. We really don't know why it does that. But that's okay. I'm going to keep selling it.
Is things going pretty much over to CAD now, or?
We do all of our engineering in CAD, yeah. We use SolidWorks like most of the makers.
How did you start out? Just going to the shop and coming up with a prototype, right?
Pencil and paper, grinding wheels, you know, with the hole. When I did the hole, I'd always been able to open knives with one hand. I learned how to do that on a Buck 110 when I was 25 years old. I had one of the Buck 110s the first year they came out. I think Buck is a great company and they do a good job. And I wanted to be able to make a knife so that anybody could do that. And so I started adding things to the blade, with discs, studs, anything, and they always got in the way. So then I started taking away from the blade. First I scratched it up, and then I made a couple of dents, and then a couple of dents become a hole. And so the first one I made, I took an old Japanese stainless knife, and I welded some drill rod onto the top of the blade, and I formed it, and then I drilled it with a hand drill. I didn't have any equipment, just to prove out the idea. And then once I knew the idea worked, then it was all pencil and paper for the early knives.
As strong as FRA
We started with CAD probably about
weight savings by nesting the hell
85 or 86.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's really neat. Oh, that is really cool.
The hole's kind of the trademark ever since.
Well, first it was patented, and we really used the hole a lot. And then because nobody had used a round hole, they figured out a way around our patent because the patent said that there would be a hump. And so they figured out if they could eliminate the hump, they could get around the patent. I think it was Blackie Collins, the first one to figure that out. but they couldn't use a round hole. They had to use a long oval hole. The patent wasn't on a hole. It was on the fact that you could get your thumb on some part of the edge of the blade, a dent, and use it to open the knife with one hand.
The Benchmade AFCK.
Personally, I'm
The
excited.
Benchmade AFCK, we licensed Lester. Lester and I were pretty close back then. The AFCK, if you lay it on top of a police model, they're almost identical. His is a liner lock. But back then, you know, we were both doing a lot of new stuff. Lester and I were just coming onto the scene, and so he was doing cool stuff. I was doing cool stuff. He's still doing cool stuff. We're still doing cool stuff.
So now high centered on a tree. Out in the middle of the
Okay.
Man, you covered it all.
All right. Turn.